Welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and I am excited to jump in every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern to talk about the business of being an author. Everything from self-publishing to how to market your book when you're traditionally published to publishing questions. We pretty much cover it all. You're welcome to join us live any Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern by going to newshelves.com/FAA. You can join us on Zoom. You do have to register, but it's free. And you can, of course, always email in your questions to info@newshelves.com. We save those up throughout the week and then we answer them on Friday. So we've got some questions in the chat. We've got questions that came in by email. We're going to jump in and start answering those. Today, we'll start with a question from Jackie. What are the key pieces that should be included in a query letter to potential publishers? I remember it is best to keep it to one page. Be clear and concise. Explain the story's plot, main character, conflict resolution. Also, if you don't have a specific name for the query letter, how should you address that? That's a lot of great questions. So let's actually break that down into a couple of answers. Number one, and foremost, it is so important that in your query letter, you follow the instructions of or agency. If you are going through Query Tracker and they ask for you to put the first line should be your favorite candy, you darn well better put it. The reason why is it's kind of a test to see if you'll listen to instructions. It also makes it easier and more streamlined for them to be able to process all of those queries. So first and foremost, make sure that you are reading the requirements on Query Tracker, on their website, wherever you're getting your information from, and make sure that you are following what they say. Sometimes agents will say, paste the first page of your book, the first 500 words. Sometimes they'll say, I want 10 pages in a Word document. Make sure that you're doing whatever they say. Now, beyond that, there are some general things that would go into a query letter. So the first thing is exactly what you said, an introduction, who you are and why you're the right person to write what you wrote. So for example, if you are a suspense writer and you're writing medical kind of suspense and you also happen to be a doctor, then that certainly plays into it. Saying something like, hi, my name is Keri. I write medical suspense using my vast knowledge as a heart surgeon. Well, then that would actually help qualify me for what I'm writing. So if you have some type of experience that you can or should weave in, that is one of the things that you kind of want to consider. But you also just want to introduce who you are. You want it to be, here's the thing, you don't want it to be bland. You don't want it to be blanketed, but you also want to make sure that you're not rambling. So something that is friendly, that makes you stand out is always helpful. Sometimes it's a little random. Like I have seen query letters where it's like, hey, my name's Keri. I'm a romantasy author and I have all of my favorite authors inked onto my skin as tattoos or something. So sometimes it's a little kooky, sometimes it's highlighting your experience, but you should also know based on what you're writing and the agent that you're reaching out to, that's going to make a big difference. As far as how do we address it, if there's no one really to address, typically that's going to happen when there are open submissions like from a publisher or if there are open submissions from an agency. So in that case, you could just address the group as a whole. Hey, agency name, or you could address it as editorial team. I mean, again, if you are going for a nonfiction business book, you're going to be more formal. If you are going for a romantasy, a horror book, you're probably not going to be as formal. So those are one of the things you would kind of consider. If you do know who you're addressing, it is important that it's really no longer a thing to say Miss, Mr., that kind of thing. It is more comfortable for most people just to use first and last names. So Keri Barnum, dear Keri Barnum, or dear Keri, first name is fine. We're on that level. But so personalizing it is preferred if you know a name. If you don't, then going something with more general is okay. But submission agent is kind of like meh, so not our favorite, but doing something like maybe who the lead agent is, or maybe who owns the agency. In that case, you could say, Dear Marissa and team, because I know Marissa owns and runs the agency. That would make sense. Personalize as much as possible, though. So of course we have kind of the intro, and then we have our intro of yourself. So kind of your little bio piece is important. Then you have to have your hook, if you will. And that's where you're introducing the book's core premise. Like, what kind of book is it? Who's it for? What's it going to do? It's kind of your elevator pitch. So that's really important. And then from there, we are going to be your book summary. This is your middle paragraph usually, but your book summary is a concise blurb. This is not long. I've seen summaries of books that come in at like 2 pages long. No, 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 my friends. We want something that's like 150, maybe 200 words. So a very concise blurb is going to go in next. You want to really introduce the main character, the settings, the stakes. I cannot stress enough, you have to have the stakes. Why should we care? What's at risk? What's the main conflict going on? If you just tell me that you have a suspense novel where, character A is a doctor and they're racing to save the world. Great. Against what? Against who? You really have to build those stakes and those characters, because I need to care about what happens. And if that's not happening, then your query letter is not going to help me. Remember, agents get literally, when they open their queries, they're getting literally hundreds of queries a week, if not a day. I have a lot of agent friends. I promise you, they are getting tons. They are reading through these, they're skimming. And if you aren't hooking them, if you're not building those stakes and it's like that lean in moment. You want people to go, and then, because they want to know what happens next. And if you're not building those stakes for fiction in particular, then you're going to have a problem. If you're writing nonfiction, then tell me what I'm learning and why it matters. Tell me about where the need is. If you're going to tell me that you're writing a book on, I don't know, how to paint, and you're just like, I love painting fingernails, so I'm writing a whole book with art on how to paint fingernails. Cool, good for you. But if you tell me that the nail industry is, X billions of dollars in a year, and it's one of the fastest cosmetology with nail art is one of the fastest growing, careers, and there's a big need for this thing, I care more because you're telling me there's a market for a product. And that's the same whether it's a business book or honestly, even if it's a poetry book, how's it connecting into it? I need to know. I either need to be so hooked that I'm like, this is fascinating, or I need to know where the need is and how you're going to help fill it, because that also means it's going to help me sell it later. Then you end kind of with your author bio, where you go more into your credentials, if you've published before, if you've written in magazines. Again, if you have anything specific that helps you stand out as an author. You can also kind of connect if you have pitched a specific agent. You can tell them why. You can kind of, connect there. When I met you in Colorado at the writers conference, I just felt like I deeply connected with you. I love the other books that you have helped publish. Go ahead and name a few so they know you're for real. And I feel like we could work really well together. Only if it's true. Do not make up BS. They can spot it a mile away. If you're going to be vague and be like, I just think we'd be great together, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's fine. Um, So you want to do that. And then, of course, you have to have a closing. And your closing should, again, be pretty short and sweet. Thank them for their time. If they've requested any materials in their, query tracker or on the agency website or on their own website, then you would say, I'm attaching the first 5 pages as requested on query tracker or whatever. And then you just sign off professionally. In the sense of, you sign off, you have your name, make sure they have access to your email and all that good stuff. Really, you do want to try to have this under 1 page. Keep in mind, a query letter, you can write it in a Word document, like your basis, and then adjust it for different agents. Please, for the love, copy and paste it into an email. Agents aren't typically opening up they're not opening up any type of document unless they care enough about your intro. I have in fact I have seen queries that said, I'm interested in working with you. I've attached my query letter. They do not get opened. No one's opening those. So make sure you put it in the body of the email. Let your personality shine through. Like, it's fun. Yes, we want to be professional. We do. And again, depending on your genre, but it's okay to let your personality shine through. If your book especially is kind of a little sarcastic, or if you in particular tend to be like super cheery and your book is about, I don't know, reducing stress through laughter or something, let that shine through a little bit. We don't want something that feels stilted. And to really try to keep it compact. 400 words, I'd say, is probably a sweet spot. 500 words is kind of the max. I have had agents say, look, if it takes 600 words to say what you need to say, okay, then do it. But you better have something to say. It better be a tight query letter there. So those are kind of my general things for it. I will say that I think it's Jane Friedman has I think it might even be free, a free download on writing a query letter. We're big fans of Jane, so I highly recommend that. There are also Writer's Digest in particular does these boot camps where they do like query letter boot camps, but they also do first 10-page boot camps where you actually work with an agent to refine your first 10 pages. And usually that includes a look at your query letter as well. So if you've been querying and you're not getting a lot of great responses, or if you're just wishing you had someone to help you, look at Writer's Digest to see when those types of events are coming up, because you're actually getting agent feedback and that can be very helpful. Also, if you have an opportunity to pitch an agent because you're going to a conference, many conferences do this, and a lot of them it's unpaid. It's just, you get to pitch an agent. Sometimes they're paid. It can be a really great opportunity to say, hey, I know that you don't particularly work with the genre of book that I've written, but as an agent, I would love your feedback on my query letter. That can be an amazing use of, sometimes these things are like $10. Amazing use of $10 to get 10 minutes of an agent looking over your query letter. So also think outside of the box. If you're not ready to query yet, but you've got that letter and you're going to a conference, then hey, use that time. I've seen that passed up by a lot of authors because they'll say things like, oh, well, my book's not ready yet, so I'm not going to do it. Or, that agent doesn't take my particular type of book, so I'm not going to talk to them. They're still an agent. They still, and you have no clue who they work with. They may be working at an agency where they're like, hey, I don't personally work in horror, but this other person at my agency does, and I'd love to, to send you over to them. That happens a lot as well. So don't miss your opportunities. Let's see. The next question is from Virginia, and this one is about Facebook ads. And it's a good question because it actually applies to Amazon ads as well. So let's see. Virginia is saying that she has an audience that I actually created for her years ago, and it was specific to murder mystery books. And over time, Virginia has been using that same audience to run her Facebook ads, and she's added additional descriptors and additional targeting to that audience. And that audience in particular, she has taken what was a murder mystery book audience and she's been adding more targets over time that are targeted over horse lovers, horse showing folks, and horse things, because horses are very heavily included in her novels. And so the audience has expanded from being very mystery and book focused to being focused on mystery and books and horses. And so the question that Virginia has is, over time, can that actually hurt you? Can there be too many entries or too many targets in a created audience on Facebook or even on Amazon? The ads aren't performing as they used to, and she's wondering if this is part of the problem. Virginia, this is a really smart question, and the answer is yeah, you can have too many targets for a couple of reasons. Um, First, when you take an audience, for example, we started with a mystery audience and you're adding in horse things, horse people, horse things. Just because horses are in your books does not mean that horse people in general are readers. So we have the case of just because you are A doesn't mean you're also B. Just because you're a horse lover doesn't mean you're also a reader. So if we're now targeting ads that are targeting to readers, but also it's kind of being taken over by horse topics, then we're promoting a book to people who are horse people. Well, they aren't necessarily the same thing. In fact, maybe a lot of those people don't have a lot of time to read casually because they're busy with their horses. So sometimes what happens is because we think that that topic is in our book and it would appeal to people who like to read and are horse people, that what happens is we end up kind of promoting to people who aren't our right audience. So in this case, this is where the narrow feature on Facebook ads can be really helpful. When you're creating a Facebook ad, you can go really broad. Include the mystery readers, include, the horse readers, or include the horse people, include people who like Goodreads and people who read books and all of those things. So go kind of broad with your audience. And then there's a define or a narrow button where it says these people have to like these broad topics, but they also must like that narrow topic. So you can go broad, horse lovers, horse showing, veterinarians, people who have e-readers, people who are on Goodreads. And then your narrow feature is that they must also identify as a mystery reader or someone who is, reading mystery books. So narrowing down means that you're getting the and, not they are this and, they're not just reader and a horse lover, but they are in this big category and they read mystery novels. So refining down your ads is really something that we should pay attention to. If you're going to target broad, we need to narrow with the core of what our book is. If you are a nonfiction author, for example, if you're a nonfiction author and you're like, all right, I specifically need to market to, I'm trying to think. I specifically need to market to, um, goodness, no, that's not a good one. All right, I specifically need to market to people who are interested in playing piano, like piano specifically, because this is a piano book. Well, our big market might be people who follow the symphony. It may be people who have musicy things, who like well-known pianist. It might be someone who follows a big piano brand, and we market big. But then our narrow is that they must also identify someone who plays piano or whatever Facebook allows us to market to. Because keep in mind, Facebook makes their own categories. Sometimes we're like, why don't they have this really popular category? We have to work within the bounds they give us. So narrowing down that way is what would make sense. So that's one thing to consider. Now, the other thing to consider when we are talking about Amazon ads, in particular, when we're talking about Amazon ads or Facebook ads too, sometimes it makes sense to split our audience. Maybe we have a book that's a science fiction fantasy crossover. Well, guess what? It doesn't always behoove us to put our science fiction and fantasy categories together in our Facebook ad or our Amazon ad, where we're putting everyone who loves sci-fi and fantasy and that kind of fiction into one ad. Sometimes it makes more sense to have an ad that focuses on the science fiction aspects of your book. And then it's only running to those science fiction readers. So we're going to create an audience that is broad and, they read things, they love to read, they have a Kindle, whatever it is. And then we're going to narrow down the science fiction. And then we're going to create an ad that the hook focuses on the science fiction. The story leads with the science fiction elements of, going off world or aliens or whatever it is that we might connect with. We're going to lead with the science fiction and let the fantasy be part of it as much as it truly is, but we're going to lead with the sci-fi elements. Meanwhile, in our graphic, by the way, our graphic might be more sci-fi on that one. Again, we don't want to mislead people. We want to make sure that we're presenting what the book truly is. So if you're presenting sci-fi elements, make sure that it's like, it's for real. Like, don't put a spaceship in there if there's no spaceship in your book. That's not going to convert well when you get to the Amazon sales page. But then we have an audience that is all the same things. Readers, people are on BookBub, Goodreads, and then our narrow is going to be fantasy readers. And in that ad, we're going to use maybe ad copy that focuses more on the fantasy elements and brings in the sci-fi as the secondary. We are going to have our imagery that focuses more on fantasy, and we're running them to two different audiences. Same book, same vibe to get there, but sometimes the hook has to be what that person's most interested in. So again, make sure it's true to your book, but sometimes that happens. The other thing is on Amazon ads, if we're running category ads, for example, on Amazon, if we're running category ads, then sometimes we want to have just running category ads to sci-fi, and our 150 character hook is focused on the sci-fi aspects of the book. And then we're going to run another category ad for fantasy, and our hook is going to focus more on the fantasy elements. This allows us, there was something, I should have written it down. I can't remember where I heard this, if it was a podcast or I read it. Who knows? I consume too many pieces of information in a week. But essentially, and we've heard this said different ways many times, but essentially it was, if we try to target everybody, we will find that we're not specific enough for anybody. And so we can't please everybody, nor should we try to. It's not our job to please everybody. However, if we have elements in our book that are strong, that are specific, then stop saying my book can be for anybody and say my book is for sci-fi lovers who adore sci-fi and love the epicness of a fantasy novel. There we go. That's how we market. It's very specific, but guess what? There's an audience for it. It's niche, but it's not too niche. So we have to stop this idea of I want it to appeal to everyone, because what happens is we're too broad. We don't have a specific enough hook to get people in. So we really need to make sure that we're being niche enough. And same thing with the fantasy. We need to market to that. So sometimes it does make sense to break up your categories, your keywords, whatever it is, into different ads that focus on just that one thing. And if we are going to go broader, make sure that we are refining, narrowing that audience somehow, in a way that speaks to your book and your true readership. And remember, we are going for your strongest audience, not anyone who could enjoy your book, the people most likely to enjoy your book. And that goes for Facebook ads, Amazon ads. And again, there are different ways to target that. Let's see. And then I have questions on the side. So let me make sure there's nothing in the Q&A. Okay, those are good questions and I'll cover them, but I saw questions connected to this. So I'm going to just see. Let's see. Yeah. Well, and when we're looking at ads, and this is so important, and I cannot stress this enough. It's one of the things I talk to authors I work with the most. You cannot just look at an ad and say whether or not an ad is working. It's not enough data. We must look at the overall platform, how this series is selling, if you have a series or a backlist. We have to look at how a specific ad is performing and how much you're making overall, not just, hey, this particular ad, I have an author, and I know I've said this before, I have an author who her ACOS on Amazon ads, our goal is to keep it under 300%. I said that under 300%. I know everything you read says, oh, well, to be profitable, you need it to be under 30%, or you want to hear their okay, that's blanket information. It's not really specific information that will carry you through when you're trying to scale and grow. And it's not specific to when you have a backlist. So her ACOS is usually about 300%. Keep in mind that the ACOS on Amazon does not count for Kindle Unlimited page reads. So if your book is in Kindle Unlimited and you have books in Kindle Unlimited, it's not even accounting for those page reads in your ads when you look at the ACOS, which stands for actual cost of sale. So ACOS is a helpful marker, but it's not the be all end all. And that's really important to know. So for this particular author, it does not count Kindle Unlimited, which is where she makes most of her money. On top of this, this author has a 9-book series. If we have a 300% ACOS on her Amazon ads, then on those, she actually triples, maybe now that she's got more books, quadruples her money. So that is incredibly different because we're looking not just at the ACOS, we're looking at the page reads, we're looking at the overall income versus the ad spend. And yes, there are some people who will make money with not doing any ads. Maybe they're very consistent on TikTok and found an audience there, or maybe they just got lucky with a niche book. Maybe they do a lot of in-person events. But most authors who scale, who actually make a living on the writing consistently over years, most of them are going to spend somewhere between 30 to 50% of all of their income, all of their royalties, 30 to 50% is going to go back into ads. And that is doing well. So, what I encourage people to do is whatever you're spending in an ad, go back and look last month, April. What did you spend in April on ads? And number one, did you make more in royalties? If so, you're already in the elite. You're already doing better than most people. So if you are spending less than you're making, you're already in a good spot. Then you refine your ads with data and things we've talked about over time to try to make that margin bigger, with the end goal being that if you're spending 50% and making, you're making at least as much as you're spending, that's really good ads in the book market. So I think that's important to know that sometimes we think, I want to look at my Amazon ad, and if I'm spending $10, I'm going to see that I made $20. That's not typically how ad makes or how ad works. They're not unilateral like that. You have to pull in different data from multiple places to see how that works. So that is one of the hardest things, especially for people who really like numbers in particular, who like 1 + 1 to equal 2. Well, in advertising and in books, sometimes 1 + 1 minus 72 plus 52 divided by 10 ends up equaling 1. And so I know it makes no sense. It's why it works for me. But that's one of the things we have to consider is look at your overall ad spend for a month and then look at your overall royalties for that month. And then look at the different ad platforms differently. I have some books that perform really well on Facebook and not on Amazon. I have some books that perform great on Amazon and not well on Facebook. So in addition to looking at your overall spend where you're making your sales and not, you also want to break down the data to see if there's any specific ad platform that works better or worse for you. Because I promise very, very rarely do I see where it's like, wherever we advertise, we're pretty good. Usually an audience tends towards one or the other, or the profit tends towards one or the other. So running the data time over time over time and looking at that is so important if you want successful ads and successful sales and royalties over time. And not just looking at a blanket number. I'm afraid that doesn't work. It would be really nice if it did, but it just doesn't. Let's see. There was a question here about, um, oh, I have my books in Ingram Spark. Let's see. My novels are on Ingram Spark, and I tried to get my books in bookstores, but they're saying they can't order because it's print on demand. What can I do? Well, if you want your books into bookstores in particular, it's important not only that they're on Ingram Spark, but they're also looking for them to be returnable, and they're looking for a 55% discount set up on Ingram Spark. Because what happens is you set a 55% discount. Ingram wholesale keeps 15%, and then the bookstore needs a 40% discount. So usually that's what they're looking for, is they're looking for a book that's returnable and that has a 55% discount. Now know that you as the author or publisher then have risks involved. They can return the books within 180 days. It's a long time. For any reason. If they put them in the store and they don't sell, they can return them. You do incur return costs if you have it set to return ship. You have shipping costs. You also, of course, have to pay back any royalties that were made from those books. If you have return destroy, there's a destroy fee, so you're still out money. So it does come with inherent risks. On top of that, you have to make sure that you have enough profit margin that at a 55% discount, you still make, we're aiming for $1 a book is about what you would make, ideally. So some people get to make like $3, $4 on their books, which is great. The average person's going to make about $1 when they set a full trade discount. So those are some things to consider. If your books are already returnable, they are already at a 55% discount, they're still saying no. I'm afraid that usually what they're saying is they're not interested in your book, and that is an easy no to fall back on. It's kind of like a, oh, it's not you, it's me, kind of thing. So if your book's already 55% on Ingram's Spark, it's already returnable. Chances are they're just not interested in stocking your book, but they're trying to say it nicely. Very rarely can a bookstore truly not order a print on demand book because it's available from Ingram. Usually they simply don't want to go into the nitty gritty details. There we go. I can say it. Kind of, they just don't want to get into the nitty gritty details of like what they need because they don't want to educate, nor is it their job to educate and explain to authors and publishers how to set up their book on Ingram Spark so that bookstore can buy it. So check those two things. That would be my advice. And there are many times, by the way, if you're not actively selling to bookstores, I tell authors, if you're not actively pitching to bookstores, it's okay to set a short discount. Set your book at 40% instead of 55. Set it to non-returnable. If you're not actively pitching to bookstores, it means that when wholesalers like Amazon buy your book, you've got less risk. If you're going to go after bookstores though, then returnable and 55% discount if that risk is worth it to you. Some authors will say, it's not worth the risk. I don't have the money if they make returns. And so they simply say bookstores are not for them, or they find bookstores that work on consignment. So you have to know what's right for you. Just because there are industry standards that, you need to know about the industry standards and you need to know what bookstores need. That doesn't mean that you have to work with them. Sometimes it won't be a good fit for you. And that's okay, but you need to know if it's not going to work for you so that you don't waste your time, their time, and everyone's just happier and you focus on other outlets. So those are things to kind of think about. Let me see. What are key characteristics for a newsletter? I need guidance to start mine. I'm working on title and 3 or of the themes, but how long should I aim for and how often? Newsletters are a tricky thing because it depends on your audience and it depends on you, to be frank. I would say newsletters more than anything, it's important to be consistent in the sense that if you're going to do a monthly newsletter, do a monthly newsletter. If that's all you can commit to, do a monthly newsletter. It's fine. If you have an audience, or let's say you have a lot of books coming out, you're an author who's releasing a book every, 4 to 6 months, you're constantly have new updates, you have an audience that really loves to connect with you personally, then it might make more sense to do a weekly or bi-weekly newsletter. That's cool. I would say that monthly would be kind of the minimum I recommend, although I do have some people who do quarterly newsletters. simply because that's all they can do. And in that case, cool, do them quarterly, but I really recommend at least monthly. Um, and aiming for the same time every month. I have one author who does it on, I think she does it on the 10th of every month. And it works for her. It's consistent. She schedules them ahead. By doing them monthly, she gives herself enough time to pre-plan those, and it works out beautifully for her. So consistency over, like frequency, consistency is more important in my opinion. In finding what works for you, the content you have, and the time you have. As far as how long, don't I think this is one of the biggest mistakes authors make is they try to make this like super long newsletter. No one's reading past the first bullet point or two, to be honest, because it's too much content. We do not have the time. I aim so that your newsletter should be able to be read within about 5 minutes, 10 if they're clicking on links. So I like to break newsletters up into sections. For some authors, it's a personal update and then it's a certain topic. So for a fiction author, it might be personal update, what's going on with your writing, whatever you share. Some authors will share pictures, it depends on your audience. So personal update, second part is like a book review where you're reviewing another book in your genre. Why? Because readers are readers and they love to have good book recommendations. And if you read in the genre that you also write in, it's a great opportunity to highlight another author. It is a great opportunity to get easy content that your audience wants. So I love book recommendations. So maybe it's personal update, book recommendations, and then at the bottom is whatever sale you have going on, whatever next book you have coming on, you kind of blurb that. And that's it. Personal update, recommendation, your book. You give people a reason to read through every single time. For a cookbook author, maybe it is personal update, newest recipe, and then, their sign off. Just depends on you. For a nonfiction author, you have this opportunity of where you typically have a lot of content that you can share regularly. I still recommend kind of creating those moments in your newsletter. So maybe it's a personal intro or a hello, and then you've got a specific topic. Maybe for me, it's book marketing. Maybe for you, it's natural health. Maybe for someone else, it's business tips. And they kind of have that. Then maybe they still have a recommendation section and then they sign off. It does not have to be long, but I do like having the consistency of kind of sections or pillars to your newsletter. It lets people know what to expect. It gives them a reason to open their newsletter over and over again. So that is one of the things that I would consider. As far as the title, pick something that feels true to you and your brand. It does not have to be your book. I think that's a mistake that authors make often is that they think that for their newsletter, they have to like brand it as their book. But what happens when you write more books? So kind of branding as your name or branding as whatever you're truly sticking to. Like maybe you're an electrician and you're only writing books about stuff. Well, then sense. So, as far as title and things like that, I think your name or something that's very specific to your brand, and it has to make sense. If people have to think too hard about what your newsletter name means, then it's not doing its job. Then it's too pithy. Just straight and to the point is always smarter. And so those are kind of the general things that I would say. Yes, personal updates. I get the question all the time. Do I really need to give them a personal update? Yeah, you really should have a personal update. You should very much have something that generally is a personal update, something that tells them about you, because that's why they're there. It does not need to be your whole vacation plans. It can simply be, recently traveled to Poland. What a beautiful country. Now that I'm back in town, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. If you have a newsletter, of people who generally like pictures. For example, if you write cozy mysteries or you write women's fiction, you have women, mostly women, in a certain age group that really love pictures. They are going to love if you are sending pictures of your grandbabies or your dogs or whatever it is. Play to your audience. And those are kind of the things I would say as far as general guidance there. Oh, and Bob is mentioning in the chat, and I thank you for this, Bob. Bob's just saying he's interested in swapping and being a guest in other newsletters for those with established newsletters. So I love this. If you can swap with other authors in your genre who can talk about different things as far as different, if you've got, let me slow down, let my brain catch up to my mouth. If you have a newsletter specifically that is on romance and there's another romance author, can you feature each other? Can you, review each other's books? Can you swap? This is brilliant. This is how you grow your audience. And I think this is very, very important because you're able to grow your audience in this way and grow it with the right audience. So I think that's very, very important. So I love that idea. But it does have to be, by the way, it does need to be people who can tie into your audience. If you write suspense and you have a very spicy like audience of people who are writing like spicy romance, it's probably not going to work very well for you. So that's one of the things that we need to consider. Let's see. The next question here, what percentage of print-on-demand books delivered to online customers are damaged or contain printing mistakes? I don't know that there is a specific percentage that we have, but there definitely is. I mean, it does happen, and it depends on if it's print on demand or not, but it is one of those things that we must consider. Um, so it does happen. I don't know that there's a specific percentage that we have to consider though. It happens. It happens with traditional books too, by the way, going to the distributor, going to the warehouse, all of that. It absolutely happens. And that's one of the things that you have to really consider is that it's part of the book business. It's part of having a product, unfortunately. All right, what are some good ways to get free advertising? Well, as I have said multiple times, we pay with our time, money, or both. So we must consider that if we want to not spend our money on something, we typically have to spend our time on it. So can you go into reader groups and you can't just spam your book, but if you become part of a reader group, can you eventually talk about your book? Yeah, that takes a lot of time. Can you build a book review blog and then eventually over time that you are doing that? Sure, eventually that can bring you some advertising, but it's taking time. Then there's traditional ads like Facebook and Amazon and things like that. And so that is one of the things that, we have to consider as well as where you're willing to invest. If you have the time to advertise yourself, like you literally have time, blogging can be free advertising. Going to book events, sometimes it's free, sometimes it's not. Going and reaching out to book clubs and asking if you can be a part of a book club cost you nothing but time. First time to pitch and get taken, and then also you have time um, of being there, being with the book blogger. So that's time as well. Um, what are some other things you can do if you have time? You can pitch yourself to libraries, you can pitch yourself to bookstores. You can do this on your own, but it absolutely does take time. You can, I'm trying to think. Yeah, you could go old school and you could print some things and put them on bulletin boards, depending on where it's at. You can do social media. TikTok actually is one of the most popular free advertising methods, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of trying. So when you're doing TikTok, for example, number one, it has to be the right audience, but we'll just say social media in general. TikTok is one of the strongest points, but social media. Excuse me, you must take the time to consistently post. And most of these platforms, they want you to post 3 to 5 times a day to get algorithm. It takes the time of recording videos, coming up with content, editing, posting regularly, and then engaging once we're there. Like you actually have to engage from there. So it takes a lot of time and effort beyond that to just do it. So free is relative. It's free in money, but it's rich in time. So I think that's one of the things, and there's no getting around that. There's no easy button. I wish there was. My husband at one point bought me an easy button. I tried that thing over and over and it did not work. Um, there's just no, you either put time or money into something or else it's a hobby and it sits there. Um, and even then you're putting time and money into creating. So I think that's one of the things. I wish there was an easier way. I wish there was, but it's time or money or both, or else there's really not opportunity there, not usually anyway. And if someone has some magic thing that takes neither time nor money and works, by all means, show me up, prove me wrong, and come tell me, and I will be very happy to be wrong. I'll be very happy. I will shout it from the rooftops. Um, so there's that. Sorry, I wasn't more cheery with that one, but it's tough love and it's truth. All right. I do have a couple more minutes for questions if you would like. Drop them in the chat. You're welcome to do that. I did have a couple of things that I found were interesting that popped up. Kind of being talked about a lot, actually, is that Agatha Christie has come back to life through AI. Agatha Christie, the legacy of Agatha Christie is pairing up with BBC Maestro for a novel writing class using Agatha Christie AI to teach it. It is very controversial. There are some people who are like, wow, that's so cool. I get to take like a pseudo class with Agatha Christie. And there are a lot of people who are very upset AI is being used in this way. Excuse me. As I said, it's both incredible and scary that they're like reanimating the deceased kind of. And there's a lot of controversy on this, but it is a pairing with her legacy and those who own the rights to that and BBC. So that is interesting. It's certainly interesting. It has things that are controversial to be sure, but it is very interesting. And I think the course is actually pretty, it's not that expensive. It's $89 and you get 11 lessons, 2.5 hours of learning and course notes. So it's interesting. Whether or not it's for you, I'll leave that up to you. On the news of AI, I thought it was so very interesting that someone has gone, there's a lot of talk about uh, how much energy it takes to run things like Chat GPT and AI. And there's been a lot of talk about this. And that's one of the things people stand on is that like AI is bad because it uses so much energy. And there is someone who has actually broken down how much energy it does or does not use to run Chat GPT. So no matter how you feel about AI or Chat GPT is not in question, but does it truly hurt the environment? And they broke it down into some stats, and I'll share the link in a minute. But I thought it was so incredibly interesting because on this, they go into like, no, it's actually no more bad for the environment than pretty much anything else we do. And they broke it down. I am definitely one of those people that it helps me, like when you say it's like doing this. So I thought it was very interesting that when they're talking about personal use of like using ChatGPT, ChatGPT uses 3 WH, whatever that is, of energy, and that is enough energy too. So, like using ChatGPT once, like doing a prompt, uses enough energy to leave a single incandescent light bulb on for 3 minutes, leave a wireless router on for 30 minutes, which seems like a lot. But this is where it got me. Play a gaming console for 1 minute. Run a vacuum cleaner for 10 seconds. Run a microwave for 10 seconds. Run a toaster for 8 seconds. Brew coffee for 10 seconds. Or use a laptop for 3 minutes. So in some cases, we would spend longer on our laptop doing things and using more energy than ChatGPT would to do certain tasks. Now, again, I'm not a proponent, we've talked about this, I'm not a proponent excuse me, of having ChatGPT write your novel. I'm not a proponent of just having ChatGPT make a cover for you because there's a lot of questions about copyright and sourcing of things like that. However, might it make sense once you've written a blog to use GPT to do certain things when you're going to put it online, which makes it essentially accessible to Chat GPT anyway? It might. And if your concern is the environment, it seems that that is not valid. So, in the interest of simply sharing information, um, I thought it was very interesting to have it broken down from someone way smarter than me. And I did just drop the link in who broke it down. They actually broke it down into like, if you used it this many times and you took a bus instead of a car and different things like that. So when the conversation comes up, whether or not people use AI, ChatGPT is a whole different ballgame. That's a whole different thing. But as far as environmental impact, it's really no worse than anything else. And I think that's important to know simply because we should be educated when we speak on things. And I hate to see people say it's ruining the environment, when that's not necessarily the case. I think that it is so important when we have new tools, new things like the computer, the typewriter, ChatGPT, and AI. I think that it's so important that we come from a place of research and understanding rather than fear. So we can make decisions grounded in what's real and what's not real. I hate to see fear mongering hurting people or even just causing misinformation. And so I think that's important. I think that we should know what it is, how it works, as much as possible. Again, like some of this is like over my head in major ways. Um, but I think that is one of the things that we absolutely must consider. And so I thought that was very interesting. I had seen this earlier in the week. Actually, was it earlier in the week? Last week. I'd seen it. I know Jane shared it in her newsletter as well. So I thought it was important enough to share it here. I thought it was interesting because I do think, and this is very controversial, but I do think there's a difference between generating your content with AI and using AI for what it's good at, which is optimizing, finding SEO and different things. And especially if that content's already free available on the internet and it's something that AI already has access to. Like, I'm not saying feed your novel into AI. I'm not saying that. However, if it's going to help you with SEO on your book description, guess what? Most of you have already used the AI description generator already. If you've used Kindlepreneurs, um, their formatting and it says, hey, do you want us to help write your thing for you? It's run by AI. You've already put it through AI. Most people don't realize they're already using AI. And I think we have to start pulling back the layers from AI is bad or AI is scary and start realizing what AI we've already been using, how we're using it, where it's ethical, where it's not, where we have to use it to keep up with trends. I recently spoke to someone at a large newspaper, a very large newspaper, who said they're running all of their content for SEO through AI. They are running all of their ad copy through AI, and they are doing much better because of it. They're already using it. And if we let fear keep us from learning about things or being so afraid to use things, we're going to be left behind. And I'm not saying again, write your novel with it, run your novel through it. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that we can't be afraid of things because when we're afraid of things, we miss opportunities rather than educating ourselves on things and realizing what we've already been using, how we are willing to use them and not use them in the future, and going from there. And I think that is one of the things, not just as we have lots of copyright things, we have a lot of court cases and things like that, which I follow. But along with that, eventually the courts are going to decide what's okay, what's not okay, can it learn, how do people have to be paid? And then we as a people have to, individual people have to decide how we will or won't use things and how that may or may not affect us in the long term. And I think that we need to come from that from a place of knowledge, not fear, more than anything, which is why I like sharing things like this article, because I think that knowledge is power. We're smart people, you're smart authors, you're smart publishers, And knowledge is not something we should be afraid of. It's something that we should embrace, even if it's against the things that we have personally believed or thought to be true. An open mind is one that is constantly learning and improving. And I hope that's where we all are. So I thought that was an interesting article as far as how it is attached to the environment. I'm still not saying like, hey, go use it all the time. We don't like the environment. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I like the comparisons because that helps me look at my own daily life and how many times, how long am I on my phone and how much energy am I using in comparison to something that people are saying is ruining the environment, and that kind of thing. I think it's interesting perspective. So with that, I'll hop off my soapbox. It's been a great time, you guys. Thank you for being here today. Next week, I think I'll be here next week. Next Friday, I should be here. I am at the IBPA conference next week, but I think all my stuff starts later. So plan for me to be here. If not, I will put a note in the Friday email if I'm not going to be here. If you're going to be at IBPA, come say hi to me. I am so excited. I know several people are going who join us on Free Advice Friday, and I have several clients who are also already in Minnesota. So if you're going to be at IBPA, come see me. It will be fantastic. And I would love to just see your faces. So thank you for being here. We'll probably be here next week, and we will certainly always be open to questions. You can email those into info@newshelves.com. Thanks, you guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.